Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 9. In this video, we will explain about head and modifiers revisited. Okay, first I will introduce you the member of our group. First is Muzayyinatun Nadlifah, second is me, Nanda, Kamalia, Putri, Khairina, and the third is Laila Maulidiyah. Okay, for the first material is for and against verb phrase. For and against verb phrase. In this short chapter, we pick up additional topics to do with dependency relations and constituent structure. The outcome of our earlier discussion was that every phrase has a central word which controls the other words, phrases, and even clauses that occur in it. The central word is the head, and the other words and phrases are its modifiers, which typically occur next to their head. Such phrases move around together, can be replaced by a single word, and can be ellipted. These points are illustrated in example 1. The Ethel that we knew and loved has left, just packed her bags and walked out. Ethel as a noun is usually not accompanied by the article the. However, it can be accompanied by the article the if modified with a relative clause. The word Ethel referred to above does not refer to a single object or singular, but refers to collections of individual or plurals. Ethel as head and that we knew and loved as modifier. And the second phrase is just packed her bag and left. The subject is the Ethel that we knew and loves, or can be replaced with the pronoun she. Descriptions of English use a type of phrase known as the verb phrase. In the example 1, the subject noun phrase is the Ethel that we knew and loved, and the verb phrase would be has left. Other descriptions of English do not recognize verb phrases, and in many languages other than English, the concept of verb phrase is not obviously applicable. The difficulty is that the criteria for recognizing phrases do not apply straightforwardly to English clauses. The strongest criteria are transpositions and substitution, but they do not apply to sequence of finite verb plus objects of some kind. It used to be thought that the occurrence of do so counted as a criterion. For the examples, number 2, Norman Lemming jumped off the cliff and William Lemming did so too. Number 3, Norman Lemming jumped off the cliff and so did William Lemming. In the example 2, did so in the substitutes for jump off the cliff, but two words are involved and it seems clear that the verb did substitute for jumped, and that so substitutes for the complements of jumped. In the example 3, the sequence is so did, which is not even a straightforward substitution of did for jumped and so for off the cliff, because the verb and its complement would be have transposed to yield so did. The one structure from spontaneous spoken English that might fit is shown in example 4. Example 4, came right in he did without so much as a note. Unfortunately, the structure of example 4 is not clear. Came right in he did could be seen as a rearrangement of he did come right in, except that in the latter come has no tense, whereas in example 4 came is past tense. So example 4 can be analyzed as having a two-clause structure, in which the first clause, as happens regularly in spontaneous speech, is lacking a subject. That is, example 4 is not a basic construction but results from ellipsis. Other arguments for verb phrases turn on example of the short in 5 and 6. Example 5, Harriet couldn't marry Mr. Knightley, but Emma could. Example 6, what Harriet did was marry Mr. Martin. The argument is that in example 5, the phrase marry Mr. Knightley has been ellipted. Emma could marry Mr. Knightley is reduced to could. In example 6, was has the vehicle clause what Harriet did as its subject and marry Mr. Knightley as its complement. That is, the sequence marry Mr. Knightley turns up in different slots. Next, verb, core, nucleus, and periphery. Clauses are analyzed as having a nucleus and a periphery. The clause contains the verb and its complement, subject, direct object, indirect object, and oblique object or adverb of direction. The periphery consists of oblique objects, which are adverb of time or adverb of location, and some other types of adverb. Adverbs are very large and heterogeneous class, and in at least one contraction, the middle contraction, adverb of manner, seem to be obligatory with some verb. For example, her new book reads well is quite acceptable, but her new book reads is not acceptable. The split between nucleus and periphery is sometimes replaced by a three-way split between core, nucleus, and periphery. The core of clause is the verb. The nucleus is the verb plus complements as described above, and the periphery is also as described above. A final and strong piece of evidence for the core position of verb in clauses comes from languages in which a clause and consists of a single verb. Example, number 1 in Latin, pugnatur, or there was fighting, B, torn with, or there was tender. Number 2, it is not spoken, 3, she will catch it. The Latin clause in 1a consists of the verb pugnatur. This verb is passive, while it might be thought that a subject-noun phrase has been ellipted. It is difficult to know what the noun phrase might be. The same applies to the Turkish passive verb in 2. The Luganda verb in 3 is active. No independent noun phrases are needed because in the context, the person doing the chasing and the bird being chased are obvious to hearer. For the more details, see this picture below. There is an example, that is, Dana saw Pat yesterday in the library. Dana and Pat as a core and saw as a nucleus and yesterday in the library as a adjunct.
Okay, now I will explain about what is the head of noun phrase. The head of a noun phrase is word that function as the heads of noun phrases. Questions can be asked about the traditional view of nouns as the head of noun phrases. It remains true that the noun controls the other constituent in noun phrases, but particular problems affect noun phrases. The first one is a verb or a verb and its modifier occur in the same slot in a clause. For example, Harriet soon. Harriet admire Mr. Knightley. Second one, a preposition or a preposition and its complement occur in the same slot. For example, Willow P. Raina. The second example, Willow P. ran up the hill. The third one is an adjective or an adjective and its modifier occur in the same slot, whether as complement of is or modifying a noun. For example, the book is boring. The book is astonishingly boring. The boring book, and the astonishingly boring book. The above does not apply to all nouns. It applies to proper nouns which normally do not allow modifier, but see the example below. Ethel wish to ask you some awkward questions. The second example, the Ethel we all know and love wishes to ask you some awkward questions. And Ethel with The in-your-face turn of phrase wishes to ask you some awkward questions. This example tells us about noun phrases that occur followed by a phrase such as wishes to ask you some awkward question. The next, plural nouns such as golfers likewise have the same distribution as any phrases of which they are head, as shown by golfers can be good company. Enthusiastic golfers with large handicaps can be good company. And these enthusiastic golfers that I met at the 19th hole can be good company. We find golfers on its own, as in golfers can be good company. The head noun modified by an adjective and a prepositional phrases, as in enthusiastic golfers with large handicap can be good company, and the head noun golfers modified by the demonstrative this and a relative clause. The phrases that do not conform to the above patterns are those containing singular count nouns such as golfer, which cannot occur on its own but requires an article or demonstrative, as shown by golfers. Golfer has a pretty powerful swing. The or this or a golfer has a pretty powerful swing. The or a golfer who is in training has a pretty powerful swing, and golfer who is in training has a pretty powerful swing. Many analysts have responded to the above pattern of distribution by suggesting that what we have been calling noun phrase do not have nouns as their heads. Instead, they propose that the determiner is the head and the phrases, and that the phrases should be called determiner phrases. This approach makes it attractive to recognize two types of head. The first one, syntactic heads that control the distribution of phrases and determines their type, determiner, adjective, prepositional phrase, and so on. And the second one, semantic heads that control the sort of complement and adjective that can occur.